History, as we're taught, is a neat timeline, villages to cities, stone tools to steel. But what if that story is wrong? What if buried beneath deserts, mountains, and rivers lie ruins so old, so impossible, that they shouldn't exist at all? Tonight, we're uncovering the lost chapters of humanity, the temples we weren't meant to see, the scripts we were never meant to read, and the knowledge someone went to great lengths to erase. And it all begins on a barren hill in southeastern Turkey, where a discovery in the 1990s shattered everything we thought we knew about the dawn of civilization. Number 1, Göbekli Tepe. High on the barren hills of southeastern Turkey, not far from the city of Şanlıurfa, lies a wound in the earth that should never have been possible. Imagine the soil split open in the 1990s, and out of it emerged not pottery shards or crumbling walls, but a cathedral of stone circles so vast, so precise, that Stonehenge suddenly looked like a child's model set. Radiocarbon tests whispered a date that shattered every tidy history book, 11,600 years ago. That's twice as old as the pyramids, thousands of years before the wheel, before agriculture, before the world was supposed to know how to build anything at all. And yet, here it was. But the shock doesn't end with the stones themselves. Because whoever raised these titanic T-shaped pillars, some weighing 20 tons, later did something even stranger. They buried them. Not by accident, not by erosion, but carefully, deliberately, as if sealing away a dangerous secret. Layer upon layer of backfill poured over this place until only the wind and grass remembered it was ever there. The archaeologist Klaus Schmidt, who devoted his life to uncovering the site until his death in 2014, believed it was built by hunter-gatherers. That claim alone rips our timeline to pieces. These were supposed to be nomads chasing herds, not architects carving lions, vultures, and headless men into slabs of limestone that dwarf the human body. And yet, the silence around Göbekli Tepe is louder than the stones. There are no houses nearby, no farms, no evidence of a village. Time 0 sight. Only questions stacked as high as the pillars themselves. Who were these builders? What drove them here? And most hauntingly, why did they cover it all up? Some whisper of cataclysms, comets, solar storms, disasters from the sky. Others imagine a priestly elite, guardians of knowledge from an older, forgotten world. Scholars counter with caution. Maybe the burial was ritual, like Tibetan monks sweeping away sand mandalas to honor impermanence. But the unease lingers. If this was humanity's first temple, then what kind of fate? Time 0.6 What kind of vision could inspire such precision before civilization itself was meant to exist? And how could that vision vanish so completely, leaving not even a myth behind? But Göbekli Tepe isn't the only place where history feels stolen. To the west, another empire rose, claiming to be the torchbearer of civilization, yet much of its flame was borrowed and hidden from the Greeks. Number 2, Rome's stolen fire. From Turkey's forgotten temple, we move west, into the shadow of marble colosseums and aqueducts that still slice across the Roman sky. Rome, the empire that branded itself as the torchbearer of civilization. But if you look closely at that flame, you'll see the sparks were borrowed. Because centuries earlier, it was the Greeks who had lit the fire. Consider Hero of Alexandria, a first-century engineer whose notebooks read like blueprints for the Industrial Revolution. He built temple doors that opened by themselves, coin-operated machines that dispensed holy water. Even a steam-powered sphere, the world's first recorded engine. Imagine standing in a temple, watching stone doors swing open without human hands. To the faithful, it must have felt like magic. In reality, it was science running centuries ahead of its time. And yet, Hero's name is a whisper. His devices, ignored, copied rarely, forgotten often. Today, emperors and conquerors dominate the textbooks, while the man who invented engines before engines vanish into the footnotes. Why? Part of the answer lies in Rome's economy. A society built on slave labor had little need for machines that could replace slaves. To democratize technology was to threaten the order itself. So Rome lifted designs when useful, but buried the genius behind them. Take the Antikythera mechanism, hauled from a Greek shipwreck in 1901. A rusted box no bigger than a shoebox. For decades it puzzled scholars. Only in the 21st century did imaging reveal the truth. A cosmic computer, tracking the moon, planets, even eclipses, with precision that wouldn't be seen again for 1,000 years. A device from 100 BCE that could have changed the world, if only it had been remembered. Yet Roman authors never mention it. Not once. That silence is deafening. Even the Library of Alexandria, where Hero's works might have found immortality, burned under Roman watch. Was it carelessness, war, or the quiet convenience of erasing what didn't fit the empire's story? Rome gave us arches, roads, aqueducts. But they were refinements, not revolutions. The true revolution, the match that struck the fire, was Greek. And as Rome rose, it smothered that flame, keeping the empire's image intact while the brilliance behind it dimmed into shadow. While Rome rewrote Greek genius, further east another enigma was unfolding, not about machines, but about words carved into stone that still refused to speak. Number 3. The Indus script conspiracy from the stone circles of Turkey to the vanished sparks of Greece. We now cross east, into the dry plains of modern Pakistan and northwest India. Here, more than 4,000 years ago, another civilization pulsed quietly with genius. The Indus Valley. They built cities with streets in perfect grids, drains that would make medieval Europe blush, and public baths so advanced they feel almost modern. And yet, their story is locked away in silence. Not because the stones are gone, not because the ruins are dust, but because we cannot read their words. On tiny steatite seals, small enough to fit in the palm of your hand, the Indus people carved animals, human figures, and mysterious signs. Over 4,000 of these artifacts survive. They look like writing. They feel like writing. And yet, for over a century, no one has been able to read them. There is no Rosetta Stone, no bilingual inscription to guide us. Just lines, loops, and symbols that refuse to speak. Some scholars insist the script isn't a language at all, just symbols for trade or ritual. But others argue it must be a true script, perhaps an ancestor of Tamil or other Dravidian tongues still spoken today. And here's where the conspiracy begins. When British archaeologists first uncovered the seals in the early 1900s, they quietly downplayed their significance. A literate, urbanized society in South Asia didn't fit neatly into the empire's preferred story, that civilization's torch was carried westward first. Later, during the Cold War, New theories surfaced, casting doubt on the script's grammar or syntax. Was it honest skepticism, or politics wearing the mask of scholarship? In modern India, the stakes grew higher. To link the script with Dravidian languages meant connecting the Indus people to today's South Indian populations, a politically charged idea. Others, eager for a different story, claimed it must tie to early Sanskrit instead, folding the Indus past into a Hindu continuity. Archaeology became a battlefield, with history itself used as a weapon. And still, the seals remain mute. Some whisper that decipherments have already been made, quietly shelved, locked away to avoid cultural upheaval. Mainstream scholars dismiss this as fantasy. But secrecy breeds suspicion, especially when access to artifacts is slow, funding limited, and digitization delayed. If the script truly records a full language, then hidden in those marks could be myths we've never heard, sciences we've never imagined, trade routes that rewrote maps. Instead, we are left staring at tiny stones, caught between silence and suppression. The greatest cover-up may not be what the Indus people wrote. It may be why. After 100 years of searching, no one seems eager for us to finally read it. If silence defined the Indus Valley, then Europe holds its own quiet ghost, a kingdom of silver and gold that dazzled the Greeks, then vanished without a trace. Number 4. The disappearance of Tartessos. From South Asia's silent seals we turn west again, to the marshy banks of Spain's Guadalquivir River. Here, legend whispers of a city so dazzling that even the Greeks spoke of it with awe. A land of silver and gold, ruled, if the stories are true, by a king named Argantonio, who lived for more than 100 years. This was Tartessos. And then, it was gone. Greek writers described Tartessos as an advanced, seafaring power, a kingdom that minted its own coins, forged alliances, and traded with the Phoenicians. Yet today, not a single capital, not a single marked tomb, has ever been found. A civilization known to the ancients but nearly erased from the earth. So where did it go? Some scholars suggest floods and shifting river sediments swallowed it whole. Others say Tartessos never disappeared at all, only blurred into later Iberian cultures until its name dissolved in conquest. But not everyone accepts such quiet endings. Fringe historians suggest Tartessos was deliberately erased. When the Phoenicians pushed west, they may have seen this wealthy rival as a threat to their trade monopoly. Cut off its lifelines, seize its ports, and strike its name from maritime maps. By the time the Romans arrived, whatever fragments remained were folded into Hispania, polished in Latin, and forgotten. Yet hints of something greater still surface. Bronze hoards buried in silence. Stone stelae etched with symbols that don't quite match Iberian styles. And in 2015, archaeologists unearthed towering warrior statues in western Spain, imposing figures with stylized armor, gazes frozen in mystery. They speak, but only in riddles. Was Tartessos a myth inflated by Greek imagination, or a true kingdom erased by stronger powers? A people who vanished without leaving behind a single monumental ruin. Perhaps their treasure wasn't silver or gold at all. Perhaps it was knowledge. And someone made sure that knowledge would never be found. Yet sometimes civilizations don't vanish. They are deliberately edited. Nowhere is that clearer than in Egypt. where chisels rewrote eternity itself. Number 5. Egypt's erased pharaohs. When we think of ancient Egypt, we think of permanence. Stone pyramids, golden masks, hieroglyphs carved to outlast time itself. A civilization obsessed with eternity. But beneath that illusion lies something darker. A history that was not just written, but rewritten. Because in Egypt, to erase a name was to erase a soul. Take Hatshepsut, the woman who dared to be pharaoh. 15th century BCE. She wore the false beard of kings, ruled with full title, time 0.65s, and oversaw an age of peace and grand monuments. For 2 decades, her reign glowed like the sun over the Nile. And then, after her death, chisels descended. Her images were hacked away, her name struck from royal lists, her statues defaced, as if her very memory had to be strangled from eternity. Was it revenge from her stepson, Thutmose III, or something deeper, a fear that her gender, her precedent, could destabilize the fragile order of divine kingship? Then there was Akhenaten, the heretic pharaoh. He abandoned Egypt's pantheon, worshipped only the sun disk Aten, and moved his capital to a strange new city, Amarna. His art was unlike any other era, fluid, androgynous, hauntingly modern. For a moment, Egypt's gods fell silent, replaced by a single blinding sun. And then, silence turned on him. After his death, his successors dismantled it all. Temples smashed, his city abandoned, his name carved away until even his existence was almost forgotten. And lurking in the gaps is someone stranger still. Smenkhkare, or perhaps Nefertiti under another name. An ephemeral ruler whose identity is so obscured it feels like a deliberate redaction. Male or female? Pharaoh, in truth. Or a shadow co-ruler erased so thoroughly that only the faintest fragments remain. Why such precision in erasure? Egyptian kings were more than men. They were divine intermediaries. To allow a blemish, a heresy, or a challenge was to risk unraveling the cosmic order itself. And so history was curated with a chisel. Names gouged from stone. Faces obliterated. Souls condemned to non-existence. Today, archaeologists use CT scans, satellite imaging, and forensic linguistics to resurrect some of these lost pharaohs. Tombs once misidentified are reclassified. Fragments once discarded are pieced back together. Yet even with modern tools, there are gaps so deep it feels less like time's decay and more like intentional silence. Egypt reminds us, even a culture built on eternity was not above rewriting its past. Sometimes, the most important figure is not the one we can name, but the one whose name was taken away. But Egypt wasn't alone in rewriting memory. Across the world in China, an emperor tried to secure immortality by burning the past into silence. Number 6. China's burned truths by the 3rd century BCE. A man named Qin Shi Huang rose from the chaos of warring states with one dream: unification. He forged a single empire, standardized currency, weights, even the written script, time 9 5s. He began the walls that would grow into the Great Wall. He wanted China eternal. And yet, in the pursuit of eternity, he tried to erase the past. In 213 BCE, according to ancient chronicles. The first emperor ordered a purge of books, history, poetry, philosophy, especially the teachings of Confucius, which prized morality and restraint, were declared dangerous. Only manuals on medicine, agriculture, and divination were spared. The rest were burned in a storm of ash and smoke. But fire was not enough. The chronicles speak of scholars, hundreds of them, buried alive for refusing to surrender forbidden texts. Whether the numbers are exact or exaggerated, the symbolism is chilling. The keepers of memories silenced in earth, their wisdom sealed away with them. Why? Some say it was simple politics. Erase dissent, erase challenge, erase comparison. Others suggest something deeper, a metaphysical attempt to control reality by controlling memory. If the past no longer exists, then the emperor's order is the only order. And here lies the great irony. Qin Shi Huang dreamed not just of power, but of immortality. He sent expeditions in search of elixirs, hunted for islands of the immortals, and built a tomb said to contain rivers of mercury flowing beneath a painted sky of stars. He wanted to live forever, even as he destroyed the voices of those who had lived before him. Scholars debate whether the book burnings were truly as vast as later Confucian historians claimed, or whether the tale grew in retelling. But whether myth or fact, the story endures for a reason. It speaks to a universal fear that the greatest truths are not the ones we argue over, but the ones quietly removed, while the smoke of burning pages rises into the night. And yet, in the same land where books were burned, the earth would later whisper its own truths, etched into bone, waiting 3,000 years to be heard. Number 7. The Oracle Bones. They didn't want found in the late 1800s. Farmers in northern China sold fragments of bone to Yan apothecaries. Turtle shells, ox shoulder blades. Locals called them dragon bones. They were ground into powders, boiled into tonics, swallowed as medicine. Generations drank away what they thought was healing, and what was, in truth, history itself. Because carved into those bones were the first whispers of China's written past. When a scholar finally looked closely, he saw not cracks, but inscriptions. Questions etched by royal diviners more than 3,000 years ago during the Shang dynasty. Will the harvest be good? Will war come? Will the king's child survive? Priests carved the questions, scorched the shells until they split, and then inscribed the answers beside the cracks. These weren't charms. They were records, names of kings. Eclipse, time 0.65. Battles, the heartbeat of a forgotten age. And yet, for centuries, no one recognized them. Countless bones were already lost, pulverized into dust. Even after scholars understood, progress was painfully slow. Some elites dismissed them as superstition. Western academics downplayed their significance. Wars and revolutions scattered cash, time 0.665s. Looters carried fragments abroad, and whole collections vanished in smoke and secrecy. Why the resistance? Perhaps because the oracle bones carried uncomfortable truths. They showed Shang kings practicing human sacrifice, power entangled with blood and fear. They hinted at a writing system already mature, too advanced, too sudden, suggesting an even older tradition hidden behind the curtain of time. Some whisper of dynasties erased, of cultures folded into silence. Others hint at records too unsettling for politics or ideology. The bones, once cracked by fire, became fractured again by history. And yet they survive. Fragile shards of ox bone and turtle shell, etched with voices from 3,000 years ago. Voices once ground into powder. Voices that still wait to be heard. While bones vanished in America, words vanished in the sands of Asia. Until, one day, a monk opened a wall and found a library hidden beneath the desert. Number 8, the American Giants. Nobody talks about, across the rolling hills and river valleys of America's heartland. Early settlers uncovered something they could hardly believe. Buried in mounds, earthen tombs older than memory, lay skeletons. Not of ordinary men, but towering figures. Some 7, 8, even 9 feet tall. Newspapers of the 19th and early 20th centuries brimmed with reports. The New York Times, Scientific American, local gazettes, all printed stories of giant bones pulled from burial chambers, skulls with double rows of teeth, elongated crania, stone-lined coffins built for bodies that dwarfed the living. It was a flood of discovery. And then, silence. Archaeologists eventually linked the mounds to known indigenous cultures, the Aden, the Hopewell, the Mississippians, a lineage of builders rich in ritual and artistry. But the giants? They faded from scholarly dialogue, dismissed as exaggerations, mistakes, or hoaxes. Many skeletons vanished, shipped to museums, lost to private collections, or, as some claim, taken by the Smithsonian only to disappear without record. The institution denies it. Still, the absence gnaws. Old excavation logs remain, filled with strange notes, double rows of teeth, unusual burial rites, skeletons whose proportions strain explanation. Early photographs, grainy, fragile, show rib cages broad as doorways, femurs longer than a man's arm. Could they all be errors? All hoaxes? All misprints? Skeptics say yes. But the sheer volume, over 1,500 documented accounts, makes the silence unsettling. Giants didn't fit the narrative. They didn't fit the story of America as it was being written. For a time, even the idea of a lost race of mound builders was encouraged to sever native peoples from their own heritage. Later, when that narrative shifted, giants fit nowhere at all. Too strange, time, or I say fires. Too unruly, too disruptive. Fringe theorists take the leap. Nephilim of biblical lore, survivors of a pre-Ice Age world, genetic anomalies from civilizations lost to cataclysm, maybe even something not entirely human. But here's the problem. The evidence is gone. Bones destroyed, sites bulldozed for farmland, photos misplaced, documents lost. We don't just lack answers, we've lost the very questions we needed to ask. And perhaps that is the greatest mystery. Not the giants themselves, but the silence left in their place. And yet, for all these tangible ruins and hidden scrolls, the world still obsesses over a city that may never have existed at all. Atlantis. Number 9. The library under the desert in the remote sands of western China. At the edge of the Taklamakan Desert, a monk named Wang Yuan Lu stumbled upon a wall that wasn't quite a wall. Behind plaster and paint lay a sealed chamber. The year was 1900. Inside, the silence of 1,000 years cracked open. He had found a library. Tens of thousands of manuscripts, paintings, scrolls, and silk banners lay stacked in the dark. Some dated as far back as the 4th century. They covered everything: religion, mathematics, astronomy, medicine, poetry, daily life. It was as if an entire civilization had been folded into paper and hidden away. And yet, instead of celebration, there was hesitation. Wang, impoverished and desperate to preserve what he could, sold much of the collection for meager sums to foreign explorers. Trunks of treasures were carted off to London, to Paris. Back in China, officials resealed the cave, and the story faded into sand and silence once more. Why would one of the greatest literary finds in human history be hidden, forgotten, dispersed? Some say the chamber had been sealed long before Wang ever touched it, perhaps to protect the texts from raids, purges, or zealous reformers. Others whisper of stranger things, celestial charts with uncanny precision, medical treatises describing diseases centuries ahead of their time, references to books we still haven't found. Among the scrolls was the Diamond Sutra, the world's oldest printed book, dated to 868 CE. Its technique seemed out of place, as if it had leapt ahead of its age. What else was hidden there before trunks were carried away? What might still be sealed in chambers no one dares to open? Scholars debate whether this was a desperate cache, a time capsule, or something more deliberate, an archive sealed not just to preserve, but to withhold. Even now, rumors persist of other hidden caves within the Mogao complex. Known, mapped, left unopened. The desert remembers. Beneath its sands lie libraries waiting to breathe again. And maybe, just maybe, what was taken from that first cave was only a fragment of what still sleeps in the dark. Number 10. Atlantis. A real place or a real distraction. Few ancient mysteries have captured the imagination like Atlantis. A mighty island civilization, described by Plato in 360 BCE, blessed with engineering, philosophy, and power, until, in his tale, arrogance doomed it, and the sea swallowed it whole. For more than 2,000 years, dreamers, scholars, and charlatans alike have chased its ghost beneath waves, deserts, and ice. And yet, no trace has ever been found. Here's the deeper mystery. Why does Atlantis, based only on Plato's second-hand account, overshadow real lost cities? Tartessos, Mohenjo-Daro, Caral, all tangible, all rich with unanswered questions. Yet Atlantis steals the spotlight every time. Some historians say Plato never meant it literally at all, only as an allegory, a parable about hubris and the fall of nations. But beginning in the 19th century, Atlantis took on another life. At a time when European empires were hungry to trace civilization's roots back to themselves, the idea of a lost superior Atlantic race, a forerunner to the West, was seductive. Atlantis became not just a legend, but a justification. Fringe authors expanded it further. Advanced technology, psychic powers, flying machines. A utopia drowned but not defeated. These stories shouted louder than the quiet truths emerging from real excavation sites. Meanwhile, Evidence that might have linked Plato's tale to something real, like the volcanic destruction of Santorini and the fall of the Minoans, was sidelined. Atlantis had grown too big to share the stage. And this is where the conspiracy thickens. Some suggest Atlantis wasn't just a legend, but a distraction. A safe mystery, grand, romantic, but conveniently unverifiable. By feeding our obsession with a phantom, attention was drawn away from ruins that genuinely disrupt timelines and challenge orthodoxies. Maybe Atlantis was never a city at all. Maybe it was a mirror, reflecting less of the ancient world, and more of our refusal to face it. Conclusion. So what do we make of it all? From buried temples in Turkey to vanished giants in America, from erased pharaohs to burned books, the pattern repeats itself across continents and centuries. Discovery, wonder, then silence. These are not just accidents of time. They are deliberate acts. Chisels striking names from stone. Fires consuming scrolls. Libraries sealed. Kingdoms erased. Bones spirited away. Each silence served someone. Each absence protected a story, or an empire, or an order that feared what memory might unleash. But here's the paradox. Truth has a strange habit of clawing its way back. A buried pillar rises again. A rusted mechanism reveals its gears. A shard of bone whispers the name of a forgotten king. No matter how deep it's hidden, no matter how carefully erased, the past leaves fingerprints on stone, on paper, in myth, even in bloodlines that walk among us still. History, we're told, is a record of what happened. But in truth, it is a battlefield of what was allowed to survive. Our timelines, our maps, our textbooks, they are polished, edited, curated versions of something far stranger. And maybe that's the greatest mystery of all. Not the ruins we've found. Not the scripts we can't read. Not the names chipped away. But the question that hangs over them all like a shadow. What were we never meant to know?